Okay.
Alright, y'all been asking for a rebuild on the gun, so I'm going to go through it. I have broke this thing down to 100% broke down like you bought every individual part. We're going to go over everything, and I'm going to go through it slowly and show you how it's done. There are certain aspects of this that you will be able to skip when you're doing a rebuild. The handle, for the most part, you won't have to rebuild every time, but the fluid housing and stuff like that, you're going to have to rebuild. But again, I put it all, blew it completely apart, so that way I can go through everything and walk you through it. So, here we go. Alright, first thing I'm going to do right now is this is the back cap. So I've got this part, this part, this part, and finally that part. So first thing I got to do is there's an O-ring that goes right here. So that's just the same as the spool valve. So I'm going to get in here, find the spool valve O-ring. Sometimes it can be a little difficult. There we go. Okay, so now that's on. This is the only grease I use. It doesn't necessarily have to be Graco grease. So you can get a good white lithium. But just a light amount of grease is all you need right there. So, and that just slides. Got the spring. Put the spring in. See how easy it moves. Now, put this on. There's a little shelf right there. So that's designed to go in there. Now you can have this on backwards in it. So let's see, right now I got lucky on the first try. It lines up with the I and the O, which is basically just a shut off. So, but there's that. Okay, so now I forgot to take this one off from earlier. Put all brand new O-rings on there. So you find the right O-rings. So obviously that one's it. Like I say, very little grease. You don't need to have a mountain of grease on this stuff. And that's it for the back cap. Set it right there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to deal with is going to be the handle. Okay, so now just so everybody understands, drop this down, okay, and then you can look through the back, which is kind of hard to see, but you can see where the drill bit drops all the way in on that one and that one. Okay, there's a couple of air holes up here. You've got this one right here, which goes in at that heavy angle. You've got two back here that go in at a heavy angle. So now, to make sure when you have problems with it triggering, with it being slow and everything, your biggest problem is going to be this front air chamber, because it goes down at an angle like this and it comes up through the handle like that. Get something small. All this is just a piece off of my broom right here, but you can see how long it is. I can take it and it makes that turn, and I can actually, if I look through the back, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it comes, you can see it right through that hole, so you know it's clear. If you pull the trigger and it won't cycle at all, check that. That's usually where you've got junk built up. So, okay, so that's all good. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put certain things on there. So this piece right here, it's nice and snug. You don't have to be a He-Man and put it on. Now, one thing I'm not going to go over is I'm not going to go over putting this on. I mean, that's just trigger handle. If you can't figure that out, don't be in the business. Okay. Next thing I'm putting on is I'm going to put on my muffler. Now, granted, a long time ago, I've already punched out the hole in it, so that way I don't have to worry about it. But this is the way I do it. A lot of people just have it straight in. I prefer to have it on a 90, and I'll show you why here in just a second. Okay, so now I've got it on that 90 and I've got it set at an angle. That way, when I'm spraying open seal and I get to the top of the cavity, that air doesn't shoot straight down into the foam and create a hole. It comes out, it shoots out right over here to the side. So there's that. Alright. So next thing I'm going to address, the piston. Quick wipe down, stuff like that. Now granted, I've had my stuff sitting in CU6, cold CU6, for about 3 or 4 days now. So it's always good to wipe them down. I forgot to wipe this one down earlier before the video. Okay, so now we need the O-rings for it. So double checking everything. There's that one. And it's going to be this bad O-ring that goes on. There's that. Just a little bit of grease. A little bit of grease. Again, it doesn't take a whole lot of grease on this. So, okay. So now it's greased up. Now we're going to take it, slide it in, turn it slightly. Okay, you heard that. If you can hear it, you can hear it pushing the air. So, now that part's on. Now, if you ever put this thing in a vise, don't crank down on it. If you put this out around, you almost cannot put this on. There's that right there. Now I'm going to do something that not a whole lot of people do. Some people do it. Set that right there. So what I'm going to do, I've got that close to tighten down. Just a little screwdriver. And all I do is I tap it just a little bit with the T that's on here. You can put a pair of channel locks on it or whatnot. I just like tightening it down to make sure it's nice and snug so it doesn't come off right in the middle of spraying. Okay, so there's that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the spool valve in. So I've got my spring right here. This is my air. If I change that out, I don't like the fact the Graco ends. I just use a regular air piece. Okay, and there's my spool valve. Okay, one of the things on the spool valve, I don't want to introduce any dirt. So, is this right here? Should slide all the way up. See, I didn't make sure it was good and clean earlier. If you can see, it's pushing stuff out right now. So, even though it soaks, you always got to make sure that everything is clean. I like to say that when you rebuild the gun, it needs to be surgically clean, because that just means that if everything's surgically clean, you know it's clean. Okay, I'm going to blow this out real quick. So I can take and I can look cleanly through all of those lines. So now I need to put the spool valve O-rings on. So you got a little bullet right here. Okay, and go ahead and just stay kind of close instead of so far away. Okay. So that bullet just slides right there. You don't have to use those, but it makes life so much easier. So, see, it just slides, spreads them out nice and smooth. There's two. There's number 3. Alright, so now you're done with that bullet. So, again, a little bit of grease. Let's see, just a little. Alright, so now, do it this way. Put that on the back. Take it, shove it in, and we'll check it for operation to make sure it feels smooth. Okay. So now that's out. Next thing I'm going to do, got my spring in there. There's a few people that run without it. Emergency situation, if you can find a ballpoint pen, take the spring from it. There's that. Now I'm going to check. Okay. See, no hang-ups. It snaps it back. So now I'm going to tighten this down. I've had one of these pop off right in the middle of spraying. That sucks. Okay. So that's the handle. Handle is complete. One of the things you can do once you get the handle complete, and it's going to get loud, hook it up. Because of the massive airflow, it's going to have a delay. Don't expect it to be wide open. So now I'm going to set this in here. Now the trick is, okay, pause it.
Go.
Alright, so sorry about that interruption. So again, if you're going to put this in there, you notice how loose that is. That's all it is basically just to hold it. And you'll understand why here in just a minute. So now, let's move over to the next part. Fluid housing. Kind of looks a little different, doesn't it? It's because I've got it blown completely apart. So, you know, you've got O-rings here. You got your air grease, this back cap. So now, another area to sit there and look is passageways. So, making sure they're all clean. Now, I've already made sure that they're clean, but so just so everybody knows. Okay, 2 of them to take a look at always is right in here. So I'll use this drill bit. So, but you can see how that passageway, and there's another one right over here that you can see. You look all the way through. So, all right. So now I want to start assembling this. So first thing I'm going to do, nylon brush, just to make sure it's nice and smooth inside. So that way it looks good. Okay, now let's start assembling this. So this back ring goes right here, and you have this split ring right here. Slide it down. There's 2 grooves in here. You want this on the back groove when you're putting it in. Nothing on this gun should be forced. You force it, you break it. Okay, so it's nice and seated flush. So that should be able to spin just easy. Okay, so now we need to get the correct O-ring. I just happen to have it laying on top. Just verify it right there. Okay. And then the front O-ring, which goes right here. that one. Now we're going to put that one on. Alright, so now we got an O-ring there, we got an O-ring there. Okay, so next thing, air bleeder. Okay, there's an O-ring that goes right here also. It's another spool valve style O-ring. Okay, and just a little bit of grease, not much. And it just screws right in. I like to take mine, screw it all the way in, and then back it off about a quarter turn. That's all. Okay. Now you have your grease fitting, goes right here. I personally have quit using grease a long time ago. Some people still like to use it. I'm a believer that all it does is cause me to have to rebuild my gun more often. So go ahead and put the air cap on. Most air caps are lost. Not surprising. Alright, so the fluid housing has been rebuilt. Okay, so now we have all the other miscellaneous parts that we have to put together. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the check valves. Okay, obviously this one's been marked A right here. So, I'm going to get the right O-rings for it. There's one. We'll go ahead and grab out the second one. Again, just a light amount of grease. Put it on. And you put it on. Screens actually are pretty helpful. I used to not run them for a long time, but they do help. So, okay, so we know this one's the A. It's marked A right here. So, I'm going to put it in just slightly. Okay, it goes in nice and easy. So now we do the B side. So, here's the B.
You going to show me the number or the letter? The letter on it?
Most B's don't come with a letter.
Yeah.
So, unless you get an Evo spray. Evo spray has started lettering everything, which I like. Makes it harder to confuse.
Sure.
Okay, so there's that. There's that. One thing I forgot to point out on the A side, this little check ball in here. So just make sure it operates. So because you can disassemble it right here and pull everything out and clean it up real good. All it is a BB size. Okay, so don't like that one. Alright. That one had a wayward wire on it. Alright, so now I've got that. I'm going to slide it in nice and easy. So you don't want to force it to the point that it cuts the O-ring. Because usually when a gun starts leaking on the side and everything else is good, it's cut. You've cut one of these O-rings. All right, so there's that. Set that to the side. So now we got the side seals. So we'll find the O-rings. The most common O-ring for it. So now one of the biggest things to double check and everything on these, one, that they're clean, but there's a little groove right here that a lot of times people don't clean. That causes your side seal, these right here, to actually get the O-ring cut and caught and everything. So now it's kind of hard to see, but I've taken it a long time ago and I've engraved an A right there, so I'll know which one's which. So then you got your springs. They just slide in right there. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so now comes the most critical part, and that being the side seal and the mixing chamber. What I do every time, I have just some simple 1500 grit. So just get one sheet. That's all you need. Okay, I've got just a sample piece of marble right here. We'll make sure it's nice and clean. No mounds and stuff on it. Set it right there. And that's sitting right there. So both of those are clean. So now the first thing I'm going to do, as you can see, it's the right drill bit, but you know it's nice and clean when you can sit there and spin it right like that. Okay, so the next thing to do is check out the sides, which I intentionally didn't clean the sides on this, throw that away. Now, if you can take and you can put this drill bit through and it comes out on this side, throw that chamber away. You've ruined it. These things are offset for a reason, and it allows the pattern. Okay, so that's cleaned up. Blow it off. I'm going to actually look through. You can see through it, but they're still offset. Okay, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to polish this. My personal go-to is lacquer thinner. It's just a old Gatorade bottle, cheap throwaway. Just a little bit on there. Doesn't have to be a whole lot. Okay. figure 8 pattern. So you do that, you keeping it flat, and it makes sure you got your crosshatch going both ways even. So now I'm going to take it, wipe it off lightly, and I'm looking to see if there's any major scratches on it. So I don't see any scratches on that side. So now I can see a little bit of polish on this side. This is the A side, but I can see a little bit of polishing on there. So you may not be able to see it, but what I'm going to do is I'm still going to hit it to get my cross hatching.
Oh, that's something.
And now, looking at it, the polishing is all gone. So now at this point, I'll blow it off again. Alright, so now I've got that. Okay, all chambers have an A and B on them. Also, if most of them you'll take a look, you'll see a little notch right there. That right there is going to be the A notch. So, I've got my gun upside down. This needs to be on the top side. So I will flip it over because the A is on this side of the gun, B is on this side of the gun. So now I've got that part. So I can actually take this and carefully thread it on. So now that part's done. Next part. Me personally, I like to use the Evo Spray side seal sanding puck. So I go through and I just lightly get any dirt out of it that's there. So, and what that does is you take these right here, nice and clean. So, and you can sit there and do this, but the problem is they're so small they like to rotate a little bit. This right here works great because it just slides right down in there. So it sticks out just slightly. And now I got that. A little bit of lacquer thinner for lubricant. You don't have to press down super hard, but this thing is big enough that it keeps everything straight. So now I'm going to take a look, shine it off the light again.
Okay.
Now I'm back to the other one. Make sure it's nice and clean before I set it in here. So again, checking it. A little bit of lubricant. Figure eights. Just light pressure. You don't want it super hard. But checking it. Making sure there's no gouges. So everything looks good. Okay, one of the things you can check with this is to make sure that your holes are good through here. That's a 1/8 inch hole. Do the same thing to this one. They should be able to go in freely. Okay, so now I need to put my O-rings on for it. 1, 2. Put that one back. Don't need it anymore. Okay. So now
grease on it. Don't have to be super heavy. And it just slides right in there. Okay, next thing I do is I push it just to make sure that I can see that spring moving inside them holes. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing to this one. So it's moving up and down. Okay, now that I've got all that, I'm going to add just a little bit more grease to this side. Okay, so this one's my A. A on this side, like I was saying earlier. Okay. Slide in. Okay, now a little bit of grease on this side. Now this one slides right in, right on this side. Alright, so there's that. Okay, so now you get the locking cap, which is this one right here. One of the least common replaced items is this little Teflon O-ring right here, which slides in right here. It rarely ever really wears out, so you don't have to replace it very often. Go through and make sure. Alright, so now I can put that on. Okay. So the next thing to do is your air cap. This one's particularly a steel air cap, so it's a little heavier than normal. But I like to go through and double check all my holes. Make sure they're nice and clean. There's an inner groove in here. Oh, there it is. You can't hardly see, but it's right in there. A lot of times that gets built up. A lot of times you have build up right back here. So you always want to make sure that this is good and clean. Alright. So now the next thing I'm going to do, just a little bit of grease right here. So I just put it right there, so that way whenever I put it on that O-ring, it slides over real easy. Okay, so now that's there. Take a little screwdriver, just tighten that down just a little bit. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing to these as I did to that while ago. Take and just, all I'm doing is just basically making a good mechanical connection. There it is. So now the gun is complete. So safety off, no chemicals, so no worries. But I'm going to cycle it just a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Dave George test. Because he's the one that taught me. Completely put together. Don't have anything on that, but I am going to put my hand over it. What I'm doing right now, if these pop out, you don't have a good seal.
You got to rebuild the tie seal and fix it. Go through. And you see how fast it's moving. But as long as these don't pop out, again, like I said, as long as these don't pop out, you've got a good seal. So if they pop out, you've either got a nicked O-ring somewhere, or your side seal is not seating to your chamber correctly. So now, that is a complete rebuild of the gun. You can throw it on your manifold and start spraying. Take care.